U.S. officials saying the Western world could expect an uptick in terror attacks as U.S. forces come closer to conquering Raqqa, which we all know is a de facto headquarters of ISIS. Here to discuss, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Colonel West, thanks for joining the show tonight.
My pleasure, Charles.
It was interesting because we saw where there were advancements in Raqqa overnight, and this news was out before the London terror attack. I'm not sure if it helped to spark that or not, but it feels like whenever Raqqa is threatened or that comes back up in the conversation, there's panic amongst the ISIS. Do you sense that at all?
Well, I think what you end up seeing today was the anniversary of the Belgian attack. And we have to be very careful and understand how these dates have significance to Islamic jihadists. And that's when we need to rise our security threat levels and be prepared for any of these possibilities that could happen, especially when you have such an incredible, vulnerable area like the parliament. But I think what you see happening with this strike operation, this deep air assault operation that we have against Raqqa, is to really go after this base, this sanctuary that ISIS has been able to establish. But what needs to happen so that we don't have this scattering of the roaches, if you can use that metaphor, is that we need to have the simultaneous strike operations, and we need to be working with our allies to do such wherever these bases of operation are. But as you do put pressure on these Islamic jihadist groups all across the globe, you have to be concerned and complement it with being as vigilant in your domestic security as well.
But do you agree though that Raqqa could we call it the sort of brain or the nerve center with respect to ISIS and their command and control of the rest of the global operations?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In the military terminology, we call that a center of gravity. And we have to understand where these centers of gravity are from a strategic perspective. And we have to use the greatest asset that our military has is that strategic and operational maneuverability that we can launch a force from the Mediterranean Sea via helicopters, and we can put them in the middle of the desert to be able to provide fire support and assault forces against these Islamic jihadists.
We're going to have to get desperate parties, though, involved in this. And I understand it gets complicated. It's because the Kurds would be involved. That would upset the Turks, the Turkey. But ultimately, we're going to have to get some pretty interesting mix of folks in this to work together, aren't we? If it's going to work, and there's going to be some serious casualties, particularly amongst the Christian population, which more or less is being held hostage.
Well, one of the things you have to understand is anytime you get into this urban siege warfare, that is one of the considerations that I don't think you can fully negate, and that's the collateral damage, the loss of civilians. And that's why we should not allow these Islamic jihadist forces to have these bases of operations centered around urban centers, as you see in Raqqa or in Libya or Yemen and some of the other places that we know. Somalia is another great example, and even Sudan. So that's why we have to start looking at this strategically, and we have to try to minimize their ability to get in and blend in the urban population centers.
Colonel West, thank you very much. Always appreciate your expertise.
My pleasure. Thank you, Charles.
At home, we always